Good afternoon, gamer friends. My name is KarQ. We have another week of Overwatch University questions. Here we go. First question of the week was, has sustain and mobility creep gotten that bad? Overwatch Classic is less balanced, but I find it more satisfying. I felt more impactful not having to compete against high healing boss tanks and abilities that can shut down ultimates. I no longer feel like I have to be perfect or try my absolute hardest to get value. Are modern supports too high sustain? Has mobility given some heroes immunity to punishment? Is it more fun for me just because it is quick play? I think to answer the top question, has it gotten that bad? At certain times, but I think sustain and mobility creep is a little necessary to modernize and to keep up with the average skill and the pacing of the game. Now let me elaborate a little more. If you've played Overwatch Classic, like you said, it's less balanced. I think right now you're finding it more satisfying because it's novel, it's old, and you're just there for the chaos, right? But like, you're right, it is horribly imbalanced. A lot of things are terrible, like having to deal with Torbjorn being like a pseudo support because he can offer 75 armor, which is more than what a Symmetra can offer with a little 25 HP shield, and Torb's turret gets like what, 800 HP. Torb goes to 500 HP and he's like another pseudo tank. You can play multiple of the same hero. It's wild. You're feeling more impactful because everybody else is kind of just messing around and playing random stuff right now. So this is not really a fair comparison. But what you can say is your own experience of it. You're saying you no longer feel you have to be perfect or try your hardest to get value. Now on that note, on what I said earlier on sustain and mobility creep, because players get better, because they end up reading a lot of like predictable abilities like Reaper's Wraith form or Genji's Deflect on a fixed timer. These things need to be modernized to be cancelable so the players get more agency as the average player base gets better. And on the same note, same with sustain and mobility. You need a bit of higher sustain when people learn how to optimize combos and learn how to use their stuff more often, or else you get like a burst meta where things just die too easily. Like right now, you just blow up on Roadhog if you're not careful because people know how to sequence things. Now imagine that in modern Overwatch without a little extra sustain, a little bit of extra lampage, a little extra Suzu-ish. You know, it's, to me, these are necessary things that need to evolve with the game. I enjoyed my classic 10, 15, 20 hours that I played, but it made me appreciate the 5v5 modern version of the game a lot more. Now for mobility, I think mobility is always a good expression of skill, and I think having very static, slow heroes feels way worse, especially over the years. Like you play Zenyatta and you press Transcendence, you just see how slow it is. It feels terrible. And I think players who've been playing for a long time do need heroes that have a bit more dynamic movement, especially in a fast-paced game like this. Like we aren't, Counter-Strike where everyone has a fixed movement speed and you need people to be pretty much on the same flat plane, no jumping, nothing too crazy. But in a game like this, I mean, mobility is part of the game. And inevitably, a lot of new heroes are not going to come out with no form of movement, whether it's a roll, a lunge. The feedback, I guarantee you, if that were the case, would be like this hero feels clunky or slow. So like, it's pretty much modern design now. Now, does it give you immunity to punishment? Not necessarily, because people are also better at punishing that sort of movement, as long as it's not too egregious and too much of an outlier. I just realized after I answered that, I was kind of all over the place, but that's just pretty much how my brain works. Hopefully, it's less about answering the question and more about getting my thoughts out there. Enjoy. Name a skill that is underrated or not mentioned enough. I'll start. What is a skill that's super important that doesn't get talked about much? I rarely see it mentioned how important it is to navigate the map going backwards. Being able to retreat or rotate while maintaining uptime is very important. Newer players often run into walls or get stuck on the map and die, whereas good players can avoid this while not looking and keep shooting or healing all at the same time. This is actually a really good point. That is definitely an underrated one or not mentioned enough. It's very evident on heroes like Lucio, who are able to backwards wall ride pretty comfortably because they've memorized the damn map and they can continue to keep the uptime, continue to shoot opponents while navigating the back with their skates on the wall. I think SK is a great example because I know she can actually do the Lucio like Ilios rollout backwards, which is actually insane. For me, I think a skill that is maybe not mentioned enough, at least on these forums and like people I talk to every day, is timing. This is a game of inches or seconds, right? So if you are choosing to engage on any hero, it is way more optimal to time that engagement and draw that threat and attention and aggro at a time where your team can make use of it. The people that complain about going in 1v, whenever they like go in and they complain all 5 people turn around and look at them, it's because their timing is bad, not because their team is bad necessarily. If you go in too early and your team is not set up, your timing is bad, all 5 can turn around and be like, why is this loser in the terrible position? Let's just catch them. That's your fault, not your team's fault. Figuring out an optimal time to to, you know, take an angle and to pressure a person to make them look at you and maybe not draw full attention, but at least you're making sure they know where you are and sequencing that with your tank or your other damage heroes to kind of like go in around the same time and then confusing the enemies to figure out where to look. That's a skill. And that is something that is completely underrated because it forces them to have to, it puts the onus on the opponents to figure out what the higher priority is. Should I focus on the person in front of me or the person that's flanking me in the back at the exact same time? And that's what high level players do that your average players don't do. Next question, 86% of the hero pool has a win rate below 50%. Why? According to Overbuff, out of the 41 heroes on each rank, these are the amount of heroes with a win rate of 50% or higher. Is this not a bit strange that only 4 out of the 41 heroes in silver have a 50 win rate or higher, lol? So 7 out of the 41 have over 50% in bronze, 4 in silver, 6 in gold, 12 in plat, 21 in diamond. That's a little bit over half. Masters way more, and then GM as well. Why is this the case? Well, first of all, Overbuff, not necessarily your most reliable stat, but it is pretty accurate to a couple standard deviations according to some devs. That being said, the way I understand this percentage is that your better players, evidently, are going to win more games because they're beating up the players below them, right? Like if you're in plat, you'll occasionally get some low diamond games. If you're in gold, you'll occasionally get some plat players in the same team. If you're silver, you know, sometimes you get a mix and match. And it starts from the bottom, right? You have a very low bronze lobby. Okay, everybody's bronze. Okay, that's probably going to be a 50% because like 5 people win on one side and 5 people lose on the other. But your win rates will rise and fall when you multiply it for the huge volume of millions and millions and millions of players. You'll have the occasional 2 silvers sitting in like, you know, 8 people in the lobby. You'll get those lobbies where you have like 2 silver players and like 8 bronze players in the lobby. And when you multiply it by millions, right, the silver players may come out with a little bit of edge over the bronze players, and the gold players will have a small edge over the silver players in those mixed lobbies. And it just trickles until you reach pretty much diamond and above, which is the top 10% of players. These are the high volume of players too. So your average diamond will beat up more plat players. So they're slightly over 50%. And then masters and GM are like the top 1%. New masters ever since the rank reset is already like top 1 or 2%. And the GM is like 0.001% or something like that. So like this actually, it looks lower here compared to masters, but there's more masters players playing in diamond in these lobbies more so than this. And there's also one more ranked champion, which isn't accounted for at the top here. So that might mess these stats up a little bit. But the point is, the higher you go, the more people you have over 50% because they're beating up the players below. Explain like I'm 5. Why does Lifeweaver's Thorn Volley use 2 ammo per single shot? Why not just show half that number and each shot use 1 ammo? It's not like Widow or Zarya Torb's ammo where different types of shooting consume different amounts of ammo. He only has 1 type of shot, and from what it looks like, a single shot is truly a single shot, but it consumes 2 ammo. Why not just show half the number and have each shoot use 1 ammo? It's almost deceptive. Okay, you asked this question, but it seems like people already answered it down below. Edit. It's a 2-round burst. I looked at it so closely and honestly couldn't tell. It seemed like a single bullet fire. Thanks everyone. Question answered. I mean, I didn't have to answer this then. So yeah, I mean, Lifeweaver consumes 2 ammo per shot because he is shooting 2 things. It maybe just couldn't see it right away. A lot of heroes will also just consume more ammo per shot anyways. Like Juno shoots 12 bullets. For example, Juno will shoot 12 bullets per click on a single shot. You know, the rule is not hard and fast, but glad this one was cleared up. You do get 2 bullets or 2 thorns per pump. Next, how do you counter Widow now? I've been frustrated ever since the Sombra nerf because it seems like every lobby I get to, there's some Widow recording clips for their channel, blah, 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 blah. Feels like Sombra was the only thing keeping these guys in check, but now that she's pretty much garbage, Widows are allowed to run rampant on quick play lobbies searching for clips. It's just frustrating. I can't round a corner to get back on my team without dying immediately. At a macro level, how do you counter Widow? Remember, Widow can only shoot 1 person at a time, so having map knowledge and running into a path or pathing back to your team in an area where you know she doesn't have good sight lines on you, or you know she's busy shooting at someone else, is option A on the macro level. Option B, from a role perspective, like any tank that is mobile and can cross distances very easily, Doom, Ball, Winston, Diva, etc. The damage heroes, you counter the Widow with your own Widow, or a Hanzo, Tracer on some maps, Genji on some maps. Honestly, Sombra still, if you can path correctly and get invisibly close to it. And any other hero that can close the distance on her without her realizing it. You can sort of do it on a lot of heroes, as long as she's not looking at you. And that goes for supports as well. Lucio can reach her, Moira on some maps, and if you want to play long distance, Kiriko, sometimes Zen, sometimes Ana, but in those cases you have to make sure, again, she's not looking at you, you see her trail shot shooting at somebody else, so you know her focus is not there, then you peek out and challenge her back. You don't necessarily have to kill her when you counter her, just like force her out of position and minimize her value. Is Lifeweaver justified if your tank keeps getting walled off? Hello, Master Support here. I generally avoid playing Weaver and Mercy at all costs because I don't like their playstyle and I find that they're not effective. Today I had a game on Antarctic Peninsula in which we had a tank who ended up dying 9 times in 5 minutes and we lost. He tried to play Winston, Orisa, and Hog, and our DPS comp was Pharah Ashe. I tried to coordinate our DPS to shoot the middle pillar, but they didn't listen, so I considered playing Lifeweaver for the sole purpose of pulling him, but I decided to play Ana and Kiri instead. Obviously lost this game, and it got me thinking if Lifeweaver was a good pick against a Demon Mei. Well, you don't like the Lifeweaver and Mercy, playstyle, a little too passive for you, but one that seems to be in your playstyle if you like Ana and Kiri is Baptiste. What I do when there's a problematic Mei is I will just literally jump up with my exo boots and then throw the lamp down if they're in trouble. Is Lifeweaver justified specifically against Mei? Not my favorite, but it is an option. But I think based on your playstyle, you can probably just opt for Baptiste instead, especially if they're getting walled off. I'm assuming they're not playing a vertical hero. They're playing a very flat horizontal brawl tank, maybe like Orisa, Junker Queen, Ryan. They're getting walled off, or Ram. The onus is on them to use some cooldowns to buy some time for the wall to break or to go down. And then if you're playing those grounded based tanks, like Baptiste is usually a solid combination with it. So I would choose that personally. Is there any point whatsoever in attacking the last point in Clash? I just won a game 5-4 and I'm convinced we almost lost because of the amount of time and resources we just spent trying to attack the opponent's last point, where we won the first 2. Should I just tell my team to not contest the objective and wait for the opponent to capture it? For context, we didn't even get a third of the point, which apparently does something. I don't even know what the thirds on the last point mean, lol. Easy answer here. 1 tick, like 1/3 of the tick in modern Clash is that it counts as a full point. 2 ticks counts, like each tick is a full point on Clash. The thing that they changed in Clash is that each tick takes longer to capture depending on which tick it is. I think it's a little bit shorter. I think it's like 8 to 10 seconds for the first tick, maybe 12 seconds for the next tick, and maybe 16 seconds for the last third of the tick. Don't get the numbers don't try to memorize these numbers. They may be continually changing and iterating this game mode, but I would say it's generally worth the first tick or 2 ticks. You should definitely still try to attack and burn some resources, because if you're going to use some resources to go for the last point first tick, the opponent will generally use some resources back. And if you feel like you're already at a numbers disadvantage as you push the last one, because generally the defensive team on the last point will have better positions and be ready to retaliate, you can just expend like some lower priority ultimates or resources in hopes that they expend more, so that when the defensive team inevitably takes that last tick back and they recapture the point and you go back to point, the one before, like the fourth or the second one, at least you have the economic advantage in terms of ultimates. Now, let me be clear, those ticks are offensive ticks are worth 1 point for you as the attacker. The defenders have to recapture the whole damn thing. They only get 1 point for the whole thing, but you as an attacker you get a point for each smaller tick. But I would say there's still a point. It's just about resource management and making sure you're set up for the point afterwards if you start giving it up. Last question, Juno or Brig, who has the better carry potential? You're good at Juno, but when my team is ass, then Juno is ass because I have limited pressure abilities and I'm not good at dueling. I'm good with Brig, but it's easier to make a mistake with her. But she's also very good. I don't know who to pick when we're losing team fights in the team comp and the enemy isn't really against Brig or Juno in terms of counter. I know it depends on the team comp and enemies and map, but this is just a general question, or if they're kind of on the same level. So you understand the idea of like Brig being better as a counter, so I'm not going to answer that. But in general, Juno has the higher potential because Juno's ultimate is an offensive, proactive ultimate. Orbital Ray is a go button. Brig's rally is a reactionary button for the most part. You can proactively tempo rally, but it's not very offensive oriented. It just buffs your team's HP, right, with overhealth. But Juno gives like offensive stats with the damage boost, and it heals them and keeps them sustained. Potential goes up on Juno. That's your easy answer. And that's it for the Reddit questions. Thanks for listening, and see you guys next week.